Seconds. Welcome everyone to the Arlington County Housing Commission July meeting, which is being held virtually as allowed by our electronics meeting policy that we previously passed. Our first item on the agenda is public comment. And I believe we have two speakers.
Yes, we do have two speakers tonight. Let me share my screen real quick. Okay. And Rebecca is joining us right now. And for everyone that's just joining the call, I have to individually enable microphones and cameras for each person per the new policy. So 1 second as I do that. But Rebecca, if you are on, it is your turn for public comment. And yes, Nikki, you're supposed to have your cameras on the entire meeting. Rebecca, can you hear me? Yeah, Rebecca, I see your hand raised. You are up. Okay, maybe move to the second speaker for a second until Rebecca can speak. Selena? Is Selena Easley on?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. And to my understanding, we have 3 minutes to voice our concerns. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, great. Well, I'm ready to begin whenever you are then.
Yep, whenever you begin, I'll start the clock.
Great. So I'm here today to speak about my experience in relation to Crystal House management and renewing my lease with them. First and foremost, I can't begin to reiterate enough on the points that I'm going to be discussing with you and the amount of stress that I have endured just doing something so simple as renewing or updating a lease. So moreover, my leasing renewal has been taking place since May 29th. I have been put into contact with people from the Housing Commission. I've been put into contact with people from Cushman and Wakefield, and I have been directed to the leasing office through an email chain that is greater than 50 at this point. So I'd like to just share with you all some of the issues that I've been having. First and foremost, Crystal House has been unable to calculate and verify my annual salary as a government employee who has a public salary available for public to view. They're unable to calculate this after providing documentation, including pay stubs, annual salary statements, office letters, and more, tax documents, 1040s, etc. They've accused me of making a salary of over $30,000, redid calculations, and then accused me of making a salary of over $20,000, and required that I sign documents that reflect inaccurate information. They've been unable to change my billing statements to reflect that I have an emotional support animal per the Fair Housing Act. They have been unable to change my billing statements to reflect that I no longer have a car and no longer am required to pay for parking after providing documentation. They have attempted to charge me late fees and month-to-month fees per the ongoing leasing process. They've attempted to charge me renter's insurance after renewing my renter's insurance and providing documentation. They have claimed that they renewed my lease back in May when they did not renew my lease back in May. They deactivated my key fob, preventing me from entering my apartment, which resulted in me being late for work. They sent lease renewal contracts less than a month before contracts expired and without instructions on how to properly renew. That's a mouthful. I've been tirelessly expressing my concerns regarding my lease renewal to Marie Johnson, Tiffany Alexander, Beverly Brinkley, you name it. Everybody here at Crystal House knows. Yet I have had zero progress with this process. I don't understand how Cushman and Wakefield plans on managing more buildings in this area when they can't even manage the ones that they have here and take care of the residents that reside in this building. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Selena. Have you been in touch with county staff about the concerns that you have at Crystal House?
Let me see here. I've been in touch with so many people. I have been in touch with more people than I can actually recall at this time, but I believe I have been in touch with Marie Randall, who she's the housing finance supervisor for Arlington County, the CPHD housing division, and Emily Schamberger has also been in those email contacts. But yeah, that's the extent of people I've been into contact with outside of the Cushman and Wakefield management.
What was the response from the two county staff members?
They have been supportive. They check in. They have been asking me for updates as the process is going on. However, there really hasn't been that many updates to report back, I guess, which is an update in itself. I did hear most recently, actually about 20 minutes, 30 minutes or so before this meeting from Beverly. However, it was just another miscalculation of my salary, claiming that I make a salary of $96,000 a year whenever my government salary is only $67,000 a year as a GS7 employee who is just actually promoted yesterday as a GS9. So I'm not sure where they're getting these figures from. Again, I have a public salary, and that's the only update and most recent update I've received on that.
Thank you for that. And congratulations on your promotion. And sorry that you're going through this. It's very frustrating. And so typically in Arlington, to receive sort of assistance outside of the courts, which is, I would say, the number one option that's available to tenants if you feel like your landlord is violating the lease or not following proper legal procedures when it comes to, as you mentioned, like your emotional support animal under fair housing law, or anything around lease renewal and calculating your income properly. You can take them to court. That's the sort of number one option available, which I know a lot of people don't prefer because that costs time and money. The county also provides assistance through Bugada. I don't know if they were recommended to you. They have a contract with Arlington County to provide assistance to tenants who are experiencing challenges with their landlords or property managers. And that's BUGATA. And if you've not been put in touch with them, I'd like to ask staff, like Alex or whomever is on the call, if you could follow up with Selena, assuming that we have your information, which it sounds like Marie Randall and
Alex does. My apologies. Yes,
sorry,
but I have not been put into contact with Bugada.
You said you have or have not been in contact with them?
I have
not. Okay. So Bugada can sort of directly intervene in sort of a mediation role. They don't have authority to compel your landlord or property management firm to do something, but they can speak on your behalf and they can advocate for you to make sure that your landlord is doing what they're supposed to be doing and try to seek resolution. So yeah, I would definitely think that having Bugada help would be a good next step if you're continuing to experience issues with your property management firm. Alex, can you make sure that she has an introduction to Saul?
Yes. Yep.
Great.
Would it, I mean, I was just wondering, do you also, like you mentioned, you know, the first part of this, you mentioned going to court. Do you have like recommended lawyers or people on the county team that would support me in doing something like that if I decided to go that route?
So the only legal resources that the county provides for tenants would be through Legal Services Northern Virginia. Um, and so you can call them um, and again, like I'm sure Alex can provide their, website and contact information to you as well. So the county has a contract with them to provide free legal services for residents within certain income thresholds, and I don't know what those are offhand. Um, but either way, if you contact them, they can refer you to other attorneys if they're not able to help you because you don't, fall within the income threshold that they're contracted for. Um, so I don't know of any other like attorney referrals other than like maybe the Arlington Bar Association. Um, but if there's any other commissioners who have recommendations for courses of action, feel free to jump in. Okay. So Selena, hopefully those resources can help you find some resolution. And again, I'm sorry you're going through this. It sounds incredibly frustrating, and something that you should not have to be going through for your home. Um, and feel free to please let us know if there's any updates, both hopefully on the positive side that the situation is resolved. But if you're continuing to experience issues, Alex can make sure that the commission is aware and we can see if there's anything else that the county can do to help.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thanks for giving me the time to voice some of my concerns and some of the issues I've been having, and I appreciate your support. So thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Rebecca. Sorry, Rebecca. Rebecca.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, great. Sorry about that issue. And Selena is my neighbor down the hall, and I just want to say that she's a poster child for the affordable housing program. She also, as a volunteer, runs an ESL class for residents of our building, which is exactly who I think Arlington should want in an affordable housing CAP unit. But I am just concerned about what you have here is a landlord that goes out on the CAP list and is not, when an employee comes in and says, here, I make $67,000, and they are not letting them participate and they're trying to not let an employee, Selena, participate in that program even when she has the evidence. So I think that that's something that the commission should be concerned about. And also but I'm still learning what is the landlord tenant commission's response purview and what is the housing commission's purview. So we did speak at the housing commission, at the landlord tenant commission last night. But specifically for you, you all in May did approve a site plan, amended site plan for Crystal House 3. And so my question for this commission is, what are you doing to compel Cushman and Wakefield, our new incompetent management team here, to let residents and prospective residents know that there is a massive construction project going in right next door, and it's scheduled to start, what they told you all is Q2 or Q3 of next year. Because our residents here do not know, I don't think. And what's the commission doing to spread the word and compel Cushman Wakefield to share that information with residents? And then I want to see what this commission could do to codify the relationship between AMI, rent, tax, and utilities because that's something else that we're having a huge difficulty with here at Crystal House, where when the county ups the AMI, publishes the new AMI rates, right? There's been attempts to mid-cycle raise our utilities but not the actual lease rate to get it up to the cap, which I don't think they're supposed to do. And it seems that needs to be codified. Maybe that's something the commission could do. And thirdly, I just think it's important to realize the complete chaos that Crystal House is in, and that you all are the ones who approved this giant, I know that plans have been in the work for the infill development since 2019, but we have a property that is really falling into disrepair quite rapidly. We have an incredibly incompetent management team. And to make sure that the commission is aware that JBG Smith pulled out of managing this property, and their name has been associated with the Crystal House infill project for a long time. Now, JBG Smith told residents, or told management, who then told residents, that they no longer want any affordable housing properties in their portfolio, and that's why they pulled out of Crystal House. So who is going to manage Crystal House 3? And we thought, when you have these folks who are so incompetent that they can't even look at Selena's paycheck and be like, yep, she makes $67,000, that's who you've got in charge here for this gigantic construction project. And it's an incompetent crew that's in charge. So those are my concerns, and hopefully ones that fall under the purview of the commission. So thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Appreciate you coming here. And my apologies. When I was giving the advice to Selena, I don't think I realized that we're talking about a CAF unit. So yeah, the county has a lot more leverage for CAF units. So, and county staff can actually compel them to do what they're supposed to do, as opposed to a non-CAF unit that hasn't been subsidized. So in that case, the county staff really, should be directly talking to the property management firm to seek resolution. And they may choose to go through Bugatti for that, but yeah, Alex, it would be great to know, and I'm happy to have a meeting with staff to see what steps staff are taking to resolve the issues, and make sure that if this is impacting more residents, that they're aware and monitoring that, and working actively with the property manager to make sure that it doesn't become a bigger situation for residents. So Alex, I don't know if you have more information now, or if I can just set up a meeting with relevant staff for.
I'm not sure
maybe
if
next week.
Marie has anything to share right now, but if not, we can get back to you, Kellen, offline.
Okay.
Do you want me to speak to this, Kellen?
Sure.
Right
yeah.
now? Okay. So Crystal Houses 1 and 2 are not county CAFs with any. We do not have a loan with them. We do not have that type of relationship with Crystal Houses 1 and 2. That was the Washington Housing Conservatory that purchased those, and Cushman Wakefield is the property manager that took over from JBG. That's who they selected, I think about a year ago, to take over that property. So the rest of the development, so all the other Crystal Houses, that was part of an RFP that, again, as Rebecca stated, started back in 2019. App is doing part of it. They will, have their own property management, and there's other folks involved in the other, buildings that'll happen after that. So what we have been trying to do is, we have reached out to Washington Housing Conservatory to see who the folks were at Cushman Wakefield. It does seem like there still is a disconnect there. So we are, trying to make sure that, that there is some type of resolution. Unfortunately, Eric is gone this week, who is our sort of rents guru. But we do not have, the, the authority that we do with CAFs that we have a loan with, or that we, are in our loan portfolio. So I just wanted to make that clear.
I appreciate that. So we're talking about which Crystal House?
Crystal Houses 1 and 2. So
We're
the
talking about
first
1 and
two
2.
that
Okay.
were the ones that are not being redeveloped, like, or that are staying as is, and then the redevelopment's happening around that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, there's, as I've said before in these meetings, there's many different crystal houses and they all have different strings attached, and it can get a little confusing. But I appreciate that. And yeah, I'm Alex and Marie. I'm happy to follow up and talk to staff like next week if we can get something scheduled. Because again, I don't want this to blow up into like a Serrano situation. And it sounds like yeah, it would be good to see what's happening and what can be done to make sure that this isn't impacting more residents and that we can make sure that Selena's issues are resolved as quickly as possible.
I would like to just say, I'm not just worried about my own issues, but there are a ton of people in this building, a lot of immigrants, and a lot of people who will not advocate for themselves in my position. And who knows what this management is doing to other people who will not advocate for themselves and people who are in the federal housing program as I am. I think that's something that we all need to consider.
Appreciate that, Selena. And I will say too, to answer Rebecca's question about the difference between the Tenant Landlord Commission and the Housing Commission. So we're both advisory commissions. So we don't actually have any authority ourselves other than to recommend things to county staff or the county board. And you know, some would say we have the power of the pulpit, but it's not formal authority. Um, and the difference between us, so typically these types of complaints would go to like the Tenant Landlord Commission. Sometimes they come to the Housing Commission. I used to chair the Tenant Landlord Commission, so I'm pretty well versed in the tools available to the county to help resolve these types of issues, and happy to provide, you know, those recommendations during these meetings. So I think from a, you know, tenant perspective, whether they come to our meetings or whether they come to Tenant Landlord Commission, um, you know, I think we're both equally happy to help and provide advice and guidance as best we can. Okay, well, thank you both for public comment. Alex, there's no other public comment then, I assume?
Nope, that's it for public comment.
Sounds good. Um, and one item I just wanted to add before we get into the next agenda item, which is the notes. I just wanted to congratulate Joe for receiving the Carl A.S. Cohn Senior Lifetime Achievement Award for Public Service at the National Housing Conference's annual Housing Visionary Awards in June. So congratulations on that. That's a very significant honor, and just want to call that out.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes. Any comments or changes, edits to the minutes?
There was one misspelling of Karen's name, which has been fixed.
Sounds good. Any other items? Oh, and Alex, looks like Zach is unable to speak or go on video.
Yeah, so it appears some people are having that issue, but only a handful. If you do, please try to leave and come back, and I'll give you permission again. If not, maybe try using a different device if possible. But I am disabling or enabling all mics and cameras on my end.
Is Zach? Looks like he just left, and hopefully he's coming back. So I'm gonna wait to entertain a motion until Zach comes back. Are any other commissioners affected by the inability to turn on mics or cameras?
Hey, Mr. Chair, this is I can't turn my camera on either, but I'm on my phone, so I can try to leave and come back, but I think it's on my end.
Okay. At least we can hear you. Okay. Is Zach back? Looks like
Zach
he's
is
back.
back. I just enabled his mic and camera. There we go.
There we go. Thank you, Alex and Kellen.
Okay, great. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move we accept the minutes, and I must compliment Alex. I'm new at this, but the minutes are phenomenally well documented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any objection to approving the minutes? Great. The minutes pass unanimously. The next item on our agenda is the Barcroft Master Finance and Development Plan.
Yes, so tonight with us, we have a handful of people. From the staff side, we have Matt Matuzik and Olivia Sontag and Melissa Danowski. So I'll pass it over to them to start.
Great. Thank you, and good evening, everyone. I'm Matt Matuzik with the Arlington County Planning Division. Joining me is Olivia Sontag and Melissa Danowski, along with members of the Gyre Lynch team. We have a number of updates and policy information we would like to share with you, but to probably provide a better context for why we're here and how we got here, we wanted to have Gyre Lynch and their team kind of go back and describe what the last few months look like, and even prior to 2024. And you may be very familiar with their recent visits. What's happening at Barcroft and the larger purpose behind the Master Financing and Development Plan that we are now focusing on its land use aspects. And previously, the emphasis was on the financing of it all. So before we get to the policy updates, since they're largely based on that MFDP document, we wanted to have Gyre Lynch provide a kind of an introduction and overview, and then Olivia and myself will cover the policy updates that came out of this year's land use process.
Thank you, Matt, and appreciate the opportunity to present tonight. And we've got Lauren Riley here with Washkaluchi as well. But I wanted to start out with an overview of the opportunity. As you know, in 2021, the Barcroft property came up for sale, and through this unprecedented partnership between Gyre Lynch, Arlington County, and the Amazon Housing Equity Fund, we were able to preserve 1,335 apartment homes through renovations and new construction for families earning up to 60% AMI for 99 years. Ever since we acquired the property, we've really taken a resident first approach. I think just in the time between acquisition and when we submitted the initial MFDP in 2022, we logged over 68 hours of resident engagement, and we didn't stop there. This list is just a list of some of the different ways we've been engaging the residents. We had the Summer Fest that had, around or over 1,200 residents at each Summer Fest, and over 250 responses to some of the questionnaires that we had there. We've had translation services at all of the meetings, and we've created FAQs in all of the different languages that we've gotten feedback from the residents in Barcroft that were needed. And those feedback forms, sorry for the background noise, I'm on parent duty right now. So all those feedback forms really informed the renovation programming, the programming of our open space in the courtyards and throughout the property, and the resident amenity center. And sorry. And as we presented to the Housing Commission back at the end of 2023, this is just a highlight of some of the commitments that were made in that financing plan. We are not displacing any of the residents, stabilizing all of their rents. The current MFDP land use plan accounts for about 922 renovations and 413 new construction affordable units. And it really allows us to deliver on the commitments that have been made through the MFDP. And with that, I'll turn it over to Lauren.
Thanks, Greg. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lauren Riley with Walsh Colucci, the land use attorney, and we represent Gyre Lynch Real Estate Partners. I know you all have heard quite a bit from Greg and others at Gyre Lynch over the past several months, as he mentioned, as we're finalizing the affordable housing financing plan. And we're excited tonight to bring you the development plan that's the culmination of a significant amount of engagement with not only county staff, but various stakeholders, including residents of Barcroft, civic association members, other members of the Arlington community, as well as that land use analysis process with the working group that concluded recently. And so I do want to take the opportunity to thank staff, not only Melissa, Matt, and Olivia here, but many others who aren't here that have done incredible work to facilitate the development of this MFDP. And I'll also touch on here, I think you all are familiar with some of the renovation use permits that we've been able to process in the past year. And, while this ongoing affordable housing financing plan and master development plan have been underway, Gyre Lynch wanted to get a head start on renovating some of these units to improve the living conditions for the existing residents on the site without having to wait for these processes to conclude. And so to that end, we've processed 4 of those use permits, the boundaries of which are outlined here in blue. These include about 15 buildings and upwards of 350 affordable housing units in Barcroft. And some of the highlights here for the new residents, some amenities for them are in terms of the exterior, that each of these courtyards will have a new outdoor amenity area that's programmed for residents. We'll have new interiors, we'll have new appliances and fixtures, upgraded mechanical systems, and where possible, we've also tried to convert units to type A accessible units and provide that associated ADA parking. And now on to the actual proposed master development plan for the whole site. Here you can see on the left the existing site as it sits today, and then on the right the ultimate proposed development plan. And I want to take a step back here for a moment, because this proposed plan is really it started with when Gyre Lynch first acquired the Barcroft site several years ago. Since then, they've really studied this site to determine the most appropriate locations, not only for new construction, but also for infrastructure like roads and public parks and other improvements. And in light of all those opportunities that Greg just mentioned, in the face of those are also some significant site constraints and development considerations across Barcroft. And then the major ones that we've encountered so far are the conservation area, the existing garden apartment buildings here that were constructed in the 1940s and 50s. They're designated as essential in the county's historic resources inventory, and then much of them are recommended for preservation in the county's planning policies. And so when determining where to locate new development, the conservation area and the historic nature of these buildings was certainly a major influence. And then another significant site constraint here across Barcroft is the topography. I don't know if maybe you've been out to visit the site just yet, but if you have, you'll note that it's quite hilly. The grade drops off steeply in certain areas. There's sort of a plateau in the center of Barcroft, and then there's steep drops to the west towards South 4 Mile Run Drive, grade changes along South George Mason Drive, as well as quite a steep drop here in the southern portion of the site near what we affectionately call the tail of Barcroft. So even before this land use analysis process started with the working group and with staff, Gyre Lynch has studied the site, and they've evaluated how to create new nodes of development that would feel like part of a whole while also working through those challenges, those site constraints, and development considerations. And so we've developed a plan that responds to those challenges while also meeting the density targets necessary to support the historic affordable housing commitment that Gyre Lynch has made. And so from then on, we've continued to refine and improve this plan through the working group process. We're quite pleased with that process, and we received great feedback from those that attended the various meetings. And we've developed a plan that we think responds to that feedback, and then also stitches together both the new Barcroft and old Barcroft by creating these two distinct development nodes on the east side and the west side here, while also keeping this historic spine of Barcroft intact. We really attempted to make all of these feel as pieces of a whole here in Barcroft. And so I'll walk through now briefly some of the key elements of the master finance and development plan, and then we'll be available for questions for any of these specific elements if you have them at the end of the presentation. So here, starting off with the conservation area limits, as I mentioned, much of the Barcroft site is recommended for preservation in the form-based code. So here, this area in lime green, this is what's called the conservation area. And then the areas in blue and that are not shaded here on the west side. And then on the east side are areas where new development is permitted. And these are the changes. These hatched areas here on the screen are the areas where we're proposing to modify the conservation area limits in the form-based code. Here are these purple hatches on the left-hand side along South Thomas Street, or are areas where we're proposing to add buildings into the conservation area to strengthen and keep this historic Barcroft spine along Thomas Street intact, preserve this unique gateway here at Columbia Pike and South Thomas Street. On the right-hand side, these I think black hatches here are areas where we're proposing to remove buildings from the conservation area to facilitate transportation improvements, as well as to meet those density targets that are necessary to support that affordable housing commitment. And then here in this blue hatching is where the amenity center that Greg mentioned is proposed to be located, where residents of the existing buildings to remain, as well as the affordable new construction buildings will have access to those amenities. And here on to transportation and parking. On the left-hand side is the vehicular transportation plan. The yellow lines are public roads. These purple lines in here are existing private roads throughout Barcroft. These blue lines here are the proposed new street connections throughout Barcroft. So unfortunately, due to this by right townhouse development here along Columbia Pike, we're not able to implement the what is currently planned 11th Street east-west connection throughout the site. And so the 12th Road South will now be the primary east-west connection throughout Barcroft, coming here, jogging up here and going out toward Wakefield. And then we're also proposing to bring down South Taylor Street from Columbia Pike to 12th Road to strengthen that grid and disperse traffic across the grid. And then on the right-hand side, this is our bike transportation plan. So as the goal here is to, within the surrounding context of Barcroft, be able to circulate bikes, get them off Columbia Pike and through the Barcroft site east to west over to the W&OD trail. So the blue is there's proposed bike facilities in Barcroft that will exist along 12th Road South, up through Wakefield, and then ultimately here to the W&OD trail. There'll also be bike facilities along South George Mason Drive. In terms of parking, this is something that we heard quite a lot through the working group from the advisory working group through that land use analysis process. A concern that parking would be taken away. Lots of residents, lots of members emphasize the need to provide adequate parking for the buildings to remain. So Gyre Lynch has studied that. On the left-hand side, you'll see this is existing parking supply for the site. As it is today, the areas in blue are areas where people can park publicly, park in publicly available parking on the street, which includes South Thomas Street, which has become a de facto parking area for Barcroft residents. Then the area in the red are areas, private parking lots within Barcroft where residents can park. On the right-hand side is the proposed plan. So you can see where we're retaining these parking lots in proximity to the existing buildings to remain, and then restricting parking along 12th Road South and South Thomas Street to Barcroft residents. This will result in us being able to keep that approximately 1 space per unit ratio that exists today on the site. And then as far as the new construction buildings, those will follow the parking requirements in the form-based code within garages in their individual parcels. In terms of park space, this plan we think is an improvement on the existing recommendations, which are 2 public parks and with about totaling an acre. Here, our proposed plan will provide 3 public parks here in the west node, 1 more central to the site off 12th Road South, and then a 3rd one here at Wakefield and 12th Road. These will total 1.3 acres in area. In terms of preserved natural area, we're lining up pretty closely with what the current plan recommends. These areas in green are areas where the plan, in this lighter green color, areas where the plan currently proposes preserved natural areas. These areas in dark green are places where we've been able to look at this site and determine that we can add more tree canopy natural plantings to increase biodiversity on the site. And then another unique feature here at Barcroft will be these proposed biophilic path connections here in this green color throughout. These biophilic paths will enhance the pedestrian experience by leveraging some of the existing sidewalks across the site, linking them all together to feel as one trail, one path through introducing low-level plantings to make this feel more human scale, lighting, signage, and opportunities for seating and pause throughout the site. Ultimately, this will bring people closer to nature while also providing pedestrian connectivity throughout the site. And then here, the last element of the master development plan is urban design. And this exhibit here with building heights is really meant to show how we're stitching together the new construction projects with the existing historic Barcroft apartments to remain. We're concentrating height on the edges of Barcroft, where it's more appropriate, especially in the context of the developments that are across the street from these areas. And then as you come inward toward the site, these buildings will step down further and further, to 6 stories and then to 3 stories next to the existing buildings to remain. And again, these buildings are able to take advantage of that steep grade by cutting into the hillside here along South 4 Mile Run Drive and South George Mason Drive. And then I think lastly, we have our phasing plan. So I'm going to hand it back to Greg to walk you through the details of this.
Yep. Thanks, Lauren. So that was the plan. And this is our estimated phasing plan based on or subject to change based on relocations, financing, and market conditions. But we really, going back to our resident first approach, that's really driving the relocation or driving the phasing plan here. So this first renovation phase in green here, that's actually 3 different projects. We basically, because of the relocations and the different unit mixes, that we have with each phase, we really can only do about 100 units at a time to keep to basically stay on top of all the tenant relocations. So about 100 units at a time for the renovations, for about 922 renovations total. And then in the lighter blue colors where you see the 1, 2, and 3, those are the proposed locations for the new construction affordable buildings. And so those also, before we can build those, we need to demolish the buildings that are in their footprint. And so as we're going through the renovations, we need to make sure that we are that we have, vacant units in the renovation projects to basically relocate those units into renovated buildings so that we can actually move forward with the new construction. Affordable houses that will really kind of help us get going on the phasing. And then in the orange color, that is the ancillary commercial development. So it's very complicated. Phasing, it's really driven by the commitments that we've made to the residents. But we are excited to get going. And with that, I really want to say a big thank you to county staff, to the residents, to the community stakeholders, and the number of different commissioners that we've worked with to get through this process and to where we are now. And we're really excited to get started. And I'm happy to say that we will be submitting our use permit for the first new construction project next month, which will be a fully affordable building, that number 1 in light blue on this plan.
All right, thanks, Greg. So that concludes our presentation for tonight. We're available for any questions that you all might have of the Gyra Lynch team. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. I did have a question. It's
Oh,
partially
sorry, I
related.
think staff has.
Oh, okay.
Sorry to interrupt. I think Olivia
You,
might.
you can go ahead, Kellen, if you have a.
Sure. And this is a question for, I guess, staff and probably Gyra Lynch folks, but I know there were some concerns with the resident council, like not as robust participation and engagement as we had been hoping. And one of the recommendations was to consolidate the resident council meetings with the monthly Gyra Lynch meeting to talk about concerns and issues related to like property management. Has that happened? Or are the resident council meetings still happening separately?
I will have to get back to you on that. I know we have we have a lot of different ongoing resident meetings, so I will need to make a note and follow up with you on that.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I think that was actually one of the challenges, is that because there's such robust resident engagement that Gyra Lynch is doing, that the resident council, at least from the feedback that I was getting from staff, seemed like a sort of add-on that was almost unnecessary. And so a recommendation was to consolidate that, to sort of make sure that the resident council was more integrated into the resident engagement that's already taking place. So that instead of having to go to 2 or 3 meetings, people can just go to 1 meeting and still have ownership through the resident council structure, but be integrated into the processes that seem to be working well with resident engagement that Gyra Lynch has already set up.
That makes sense. I'll confirm.
Thank you. And sorry, go ahead, staff, with the presentation.
We'll try to make this quick. It says there are 58 slides, but they're really only about 20. You already heard probably the more exciting part of the presentation, and Matt and I will try to be quick. I'll cover some of our land use process that we've gone through, and then the MFDP, and then Matt will wrap up with some of our policy recommendations and next steps. So some of the objectives with the 2024 land use analysis were to use all of the site analysis that the Jared Lynch team has completed over the last couple of years, as well as the December 2023 adoption of the Affordable Housing Financing Plan with some of those deepened affordability commitments to build upon and update the earlier planning documents which established the vision for Columbia Pike. And those included the Neighborhoods Area Plan, which was adopted in 2012, and then the Columbia Pike Revitalization Plan adopted in 2005. And then additionally, with this land use analysis process, we were looking at existing and new tools just to ensure that the vision and all of the commitments are documented and can be implemented for a site of such a large size. So the Neighborhoods Area Plan was adopted in 2012, and it provided updated guidance on the redevelopment opportunities along the edges of the site, with preservation primarily through the core of the property. The majority of the Barcroft Apartments property is currently in the Neighborhoods Area Plan, and it does indicate things like maximum building heights and additional guidance on the open space and the transportation networks for the site. And then I did want to note that this vision is also expressed in some corresponding documents, including the GLUP and the MTP. So they have very specific designations for example, where the edges of the conservation areas are, and distinguishes between the Neighborhoods Area Plan and the Revitalization Plan, which is the second visioning document, which was adopted in 2005. And it provides guidance on how the commercial northwest and northeast corners could develop. And it also envisioned maximum building heights that were set intentionally lower at the time to help transition to the garden style apartments. And again, these earlier visioning documents are expressed in the GLUP and the MTP boundaries. So the land use process also, as Lauren mentioned, included forming a working group to help the county reviewing the Jared Lynch plan, to involve key stakeholders, and then to just start to identify and resolve community and resident concerns. All of these stakeholders acted as liaisons to their respective groups and represented over 25 different civic associations, commissions, committees, and community organizations with staff support from multiple departments. So the involvement of all these stakeholders helped to build upon the vision for the site, but also to balance many of the key county and community priorities, some of which are competing, as well as some of the resident needs and preferences.
Quick question about that slide. Who from the Housing Commission sat on the working group?
Zach.
Okay.
Yeah, Kellen, I was at a couple of them.
Great, thank you.
So following the January 2024 board meeting, where we received some guidance from the county board, we formed this working group, and then the working group met a total of 6 times and focused on 4 different areas of discussion. So the first of which were establishing those conservation area limits in redevelopment areas, then moved to transportation network and parking, public open spaces and natural areas, and then urban design and transition. So there were some stakeholders that were much more involved in certain meetings than in others. But then we also held an online feedback form for both residents and the broader community to gather input, as well as held some pop-up events at the Barcroft leasing office. And then in May, we held an open house for residents and the broader community, again, just sharing all of the information that was shared at all the working group meetings. And again, just a great opportunity for input from residents. And then following that final working group meeting, we identified 3 different actions for the county board to consider in July, which we're in the process of bringing to a number of different commissions. The Housing Commission is our last piece of this roadshow. So these actions include adopting 2024 updates to the 2012 Neighborhoods Area Plan and the 2005 Revitalization Plan. And also authorizing advertisement of amendments to the GLUP and the MTP, which Matt will show you what those are in a little bit. But then also approving the Jared Lynch Master Financing and Development Plan. So quickly on the MFDP land use elements, this is just kind of a quick visual of how the MFDP fits in with those other actions that I just mentioned that we'll be bringing to the board in July. And also just highlights in the background all of the renovation use permits that have been processed, and then the anticipated development use permits that'll be coming forward in the second half of the year. So the MFDP is a document that's produced by Jared Lynch. It reflects their vision and their commitments for the site, including the affordable housing financing plan, the site redevelopment plan, and that phasing plan that they shared. Earlier versions were submitted to the county manager in 2022, and then in December of 2023, the board approved the financing plan portion of the MFDP, but this 2024 land use analysis process has informed the redevelopment and phasing plan. So this is the first time that the board will consider the MFDP, and it's required for them to approve it as part of the loan agreement terms. So then commitments in the MFDP generally follow the topics of discussion covered with the working group, including preservation limits and focus on that historic entrance and the South Thomas Street spine, expanded redevelopment areas, the pedestrian, bike, and vehicle network and parking, public open spaces in the east and west nodes, natural preserve areas, some of those biophilic pathways that the applicant mentioned, and then tree canopy targets. As well as the urban design and transitions, like the role of topography, building height, urban design and architectural compatibility between the conservation and redevelopment areas. So this captures the different outcomes that will be delivered under the Jared Lynch proposal and the 2024 updates that we're proposing to the Neighborhoods Area Plan, compared to what would have been delivered with the 2012 Neighborhoods Area Plan. So again, just a much larger volume of committed affordable units through this process, as well as new units added on the site. And then you can see just some of the improvements that we're making to some of those public open spaces and outdoor amenity areas, the natural preserve area, a really great target for tree canopy for the site, and then just slight increases in the building height and transitions, again, to support the affordable housing plan. And then a number of elements on the site, are changing to support the redevelopment and the vision to support the affordable housing financing plan and commitments. But in addition to the 33 buildings to remain, there are many other important aspects of the Barcroft property that are going to be preserved and enhanced through this process, including all of the tree canopy, preservation in the conservation areas, a preservation of the courtyards, vegetation, and all of those pedestrian connections and biophilic pathways that are going to be enhanced. And then lastly, Barcroft's sustainability strategy. It describes the overall biophilic, sustainable resiliency and green building elements within the MFDP, which help to improve the livability for Barcroft residents and visitors. So again, some of these include, the increases to the public park areas and the natural preserve areas, the introduction of a central green open space at the Resident Amenity Center. Just overall preservation within the courtyards and improvement of those amenity spaces, improvements to tree canopy targets and those biophilic pedestrian paths. And then we also have recently updated green building standards in both the conservation areas and the redevelopment areas that in these renovation areas, Jared Lynch is already exceeding the expectations for those areas, and we do expect that new construction projects will meet these updated targets. And then again, by just reinvesting and preserving all of those existing buildings, they are reducing the overall carbon footprint for the site. So with that, I'll pass it off to Matt for our policy recommendations.
All right, we promised this the last section. You've been very patient. So in addition to everything else you've heard tonight, a lot of what we've looked at was not only reviewed with the filter of many various policies that we have in the county, but also with a keen eye on which of those policies may need to be updated based on this updated vision for Barcroft. So the four that you see on the top left are the four policies that are Columbia Pike specific and drill down to a level of detail that as changes happen for Barcroft, these documents also have to reflect that, and therefore, as you'll see in a few slides, will require some updates. The other policies that are in black on the left column really more intended to guide countywide reviews of different applications. And in those instances, we've actually used that information to inform and ultimately update the master financing and development plan, particularly since a lot of these policies were either created or updated since we've pretty much established the vision for Barcroft. So this is kind of how the entire spectrum of policies was utilized over the last few months to either inform the MFDP or allow us to better understand what changes are needed. I'm going to just fly through these real quick, but the earliest vision that we have for Columbia Pike dates back to the early 2000s. So when we were first looking at those commercial nodes, the Columbia Pike Initiative Revitalization Plan first established that vision, and in this case, really targeted those commercial corners of Barcroft Apartments, so the George Mason intersection and the Fulmar Run intersection. Rather than trying to update that document, we are actually going to take those two corners out of it and put them into the other document, which was established almost a decade later. And this would allow us to have the full geography of Barcroft Apartments in one single policy document. And that is the Neighborhoods Area Plan, which was developed in 2012. And in this case, you can see those white areas where those commercial nodes used to be. We are now going to fill those in and match the same level of guidance with respect to heights, to land uses, the conservation areas, the transportation network, and the open space network. So a series of map changes primarily, but about 95% of the neighborhood's area plan will remain the same, and we continue to implement it throughout the corridor, as this was very much focused just on Barcroft. So not many of the changes in that document. In addition to those, our comprehensive plan also has several items that kind of mirror with what we were showing in those Columbia Pike plans. So those boundaries of the districts, the boundaries of preservation, the street network, the location of open spaces, a lot of those things exist on the land use plan. So those maps need to be updated, as do the master transportation plan maps, as well as the ones that indicate what the bike facilities will be. So anything that was that specific for Barcroft will have some changes coming forward in July for county board consideration. And then we'll also use this opportunity to update the GLUP booklet, which is another method for us to track what's happening on Columbia Pike in terms of planning. Beyond what we've been able to accomplish in the last few months, there is one area of the site that does require further analysis, and that is the southern tip located between George Mason and Fulmar Run. If you've been there, you're familiar with the stream that kind of cuts across this segment of the property. And given how close the existing parking is to that stream and a lot of the buildings, which have basement units, we're going to carefully examine and really rebuild the modeling that we have to further understand what the accurate flood risk might be, given that we have climate change, we have additional development happening in the county. And this stream actually handles a lot more of the activity further north than just this one site. So it's really important for us to verify what's happening. Do we need to mitigate anything? And most importantly, will any of it even have an impact on the master financing development plan? So this is something that we are queuing up for the second half of the year. Now that we've kind of updated the vision, we can now shift gears and tackle this piece. And then finally, as we do get into the second half of the year, we are looking at a number of items that really focus on that neighborhoods form-based code. This is part of our zoning ordinance and helps implement that neighborhoods area plan that we developed years ago. And as we do that, you can see here kind of the timeline that we are anticipating. Again, regrouping with a lot of the stakeholders that were involved in the first half of the year, making sure that as we get more detailed exhibits and cross sections and maps, they resemble the higher vision documents that we've prepared in July. And as we do that, and members of the Giant Lynch team mentioned earlier, we will start to look at those initial new construction applications as Barcroft actually begins to take that next leap and begin new construction on the northern part of the property. So you'll probably be seeing us again later this year, but this gives you a sense of kind of what to expect as July is certainly not the end point. I'm not even sure it's the midway point, but more work to come. So we just wanted to highlight that for everybody. And then finally, this map looks familiar because it's the phasing exhibit that we've looked at earlier. But I think it's also important to note the relationship between where we are ending up and where we were in December of last year, and all those different commitments that were made that we are staying true to, and making sure that as these changes are being implemented, we are not negatively impacting what was committed to in December. And then finally, the exhibit on the right that you can see there is just to give you a sample of at what point and with which project we can start to anticipate those future public parks being delivered on the site, as they are not tied to any of the initial phases of work that you see on the screen here with the color-coded legend. And I think that should be our last slide. I think we made it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Zach, do you have anything you want to add based on the meetings that you attended before we open it up to questions and comments from the rest of the commission?
No, I don't. Most of the conversations that I was a part of focused on sort of the other more non-housing aspects of the site. So transportation, green space. So no, nothing else to add.
Thank you. Joe.
Yeah, thanks. Since I'm new, I have one overall question and one specific. How does this compare, this Barcroft thing, which I think is amazing? How does this compare with what we went through with Buckingham, the entire Buckingham transformation some years ago? That's my first question. I don't know who it should go to.
So I'm Melissa Janowski in the Housing Division. I'm the General Barcroft Coordinator for the county. And I have to say, I wasn't hired at the time that Buckingham occurred. However, I do know that there was an extensive public process. And I would say that with this Barcroft, the MFDP and all the work, the not only staff and mission input, but also residents. There was a process that involved advocates like Voice and Bugatti was at the table. So it really did have, I would say, an extensive public process, but I can't say how it exactly compares with Buckingham.
Okay, thank you. And it shows in the process. It's really amazing. My second question is on design. Did I hear correctly that the newer buildings, the higher heights are going to be at the peripheral and the lower buildings are going to be, I guess, the existing buildings, and that's maybe because of a product of the housing stock, but it just seems kind of weird that you'd have 8-story buildings bordering the street, and it would almost be like a wind tunnel with those smaller buildings in the inner core.
Yes, I can take that. We've concentrated the taller heights out to the edges of the Barcroft site to, first of all, take advantage of the steep topography that exists there. Thank you, Olivia. And so on this side, you can see areas where we can go up to 14 stories along South 4 Mile Run Drive, where there is the steepest drop off there, going up to 10 and 8 stories there at the top of the west node, and then similar on the other side. But I'll note, in terms of the proximity of the new construction to existing buildings on the right, you can see these diagrams of how the buildings will follow the form-based code requirements for height within relation to the existing buildings. You're required to drop down to at least 3 stories next to conservation area buildings within 50 feet, and then greater than 50 feet, you're allowed to go up. But really, the perceived height is going to be less impactful than the diagram that you see here because of that grade. These buildings in the center of the site really sit up higher on the property and won't see all 6 stories, right? And there'll be separation there.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from commissioners?
Yeah, I was wondering, in terms of the community engagement, how many people did you have who were, giving input into that, and what were some of the common themes that they brought up?
I'll let Gyre Lynch speak to their engagement, which happened before this 2024 process, and then I can fill in the land use process.
Yeah, sorry. So how many people? So we got input from a lot of the residents. Like I said, at the Summer Fest, there were over 1,200 residents at each of the Summer Fests, and then over around 250 that responded to the questionnaires there. But we also did mail-in questionnaires as well as a lot of other engagement. I think a lot of the feedback was, around parking, making sure that the parking supply stayed constant, and really around some of the interior programming of the renovations and what they wanted to see in the courtyards, like playgrounds and different amenities for children, as well as what the residents wanted to see in the amenity center. Swimming pool was a big one, multi-purpose area, things like that. In-unit washer and dryers were a big interior programming element that was expressed.
Thank you. And are all those items, like the playgrounds, the in-unit washer dryers, are all those included in the new plan?
So the
Yes,
in-unit washer dryers, sorry, Greg, yeah, those are all coming with the renovations to the existing buildings to remain, and then I believe will come with the new construction buildings. The desire for usable open space and amenity areas is also being implemented with the renovation use permits through creating that those programmable courtyards, and then we'll also come with that amenity center, which the programming is there yet to be determined, but we'll certainly take into account the resident feedback so far.
And then on the land use analysis process side for the online engagement forum, we heard from, I think we had about 400 responses, and about a third of those were from Barcroft residents. So we were able to distinguish feedback that was directly from residents versus the surrounding community, but a lot of very similar feedback as Jared Lynch had received over the past couple years about their interest in the types of amenity spaces, tree preservation, and then interest in preserving parking on the site. And then at the open house, we had a great mix of residents and surrounding community members, pretty great turnout overall.
Thank you.
Danny?
Yep, thanks. I have a couple questions. I'll start with height since that slide's still up. It looked like there's a delta between the planning document and the proposed height, specifically the 3-story between in the transition zone, but also I guess the 14 stories along 4 Mile Run. Is that just a trade-off in the proposal, or is there a potential for additional density in that transition zone where they could actually go up because you've got, like you show there in that illustration, a much higher building height respective to the new construction?
Can you confirm which documents you're comparing? Is it the MFDP and our adopted policy or something else?
It was gosh, what was it? It was the planning document that you had removed the 2 nodes, and you were gonna update the 2 nodes. That's the one that showed the different height. I think it showed 4 stories at the transition.
Yeah, so if we're focusing on the western or northwest corner, because that plan was done in the early 2000s, preceding the neighborhoods area plan that looked at the entirety of Barcroft, along with all the other multifamily areas of the corridor. At that time, the planning analysis that was done was essentially considering height transitions from potential redevelopment on the Columbia Pike side to what at the time was existing Barcroft buildings that were located essentially at Wakefield Street, and not further into the property. So it wasn't until a decade after that planning effort where we started to look at another urban design analysis with obviously a different filter of kind of creating and preserving affordability on the corridor and the development depths, if you will, of where potential new buildings could be created was kind of reestablished to go deeper into the property and start to frame the 4 Mile Run frontage, Columbia Pike, and portions of George Mason. And as that happened, John Lynch now has the benefit of both those documents, along with many other commitments that were not in place when we were doing our planning work. And then that led to the conclusion that some of these areas could accommodate additional heights if the transitions were appropriate. And based on the feedback we received from various stakeholders, we believe that that could happen still effectively and still meet the other objectives for this property.
Okay, so would that mean there could be additional density achieved? Is that potential?
What's happening is we are increasing the potential for building heights to a certain point that's prescribed in the master financing development plan. So some areas that previously allowed 6 stories can do now 8. Some that allowed 8 can do 10. So it's like a very nominal increase in those zones. And there are some additional shifts where the primary entrance on Columbia Pike has less development potential, but the George Mason frontage has more. So there's some subtle geographies that have shifted as well. But overall, where we are today compared to 10 years ago is that more density can be accommodated on the site.
And then as part of the relocation plan, is there a strategy to leverage the new construction? And do existing tenants have priority on new units that are being opened up, made available?
So what was the question on priority? I'm sorry.
Well, so the first part is just as part of the relocation plan, are you all leveraging, the new construction as you have to relocate people? And then second part of that is, do existing tenants that live there have a priority when those new construction units are made available, should they want to move into a newer unit?
Yes, they do. So the new construction affordable units will definitely be filled with existing residents. So we are looking, the goal is to the best of our ability, if the units that are in what is going to be the new development area, those would be the units that would be relocated into the new construction buildings. And so a piece of feedback that we did get from residents is that they really wanted to try to stay in their building, in their general area. So we're trying to bring residents back to their buildings as they're renovated, and they will be heavily renovated. So they will be like new units. And then those, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. In the orange area, in those new development areas, the residents from those buildings would go into the new construction buildings.
And then I just have one last question. With such a large site and just so much open area and a lot of roofs, I'm sure you've looked at potential solar or even potential geothermal even, just as ways to sort of reduce your own energy costs and potentially for the low income residents as well. Is that something that is part of the overall master plan?
Well, we haven't gotten into the level yet of looking at solar for each of these individual projects. We do have these overall, with these overarching sustainability strategies where each of the renovation buildings will achieve National Green Building Standard Silver. And then the new construction buildings will achieve Earthcraft Gold or equivalent. And then there are other sustainability strategies throughout that both Olivia and I touched on, like the biophilic pathways, the increased tree canopy requirements, and other items like that. So each site new development site comes online, they'll have their own considerations for how to meet those sustainability goals.
Okay, thank you.
Elizabeth?
Hi, everyone. So this deck had a lot of updates, which is awesome. In one of the slides, you mentioned that you're using new tools and technology to keep yourself updated and ensure that the plan is, like correlates to the changes that have happened since the initial, I think it was like 2012 proposal. Like, what are the tools or like what are you using to make sure that everything aligns with all the changes that have happened?
I mean, one of the examples is, I believe it's in the Jared Lynch presentation, but introducing an entire network of biophilic connections, primarily geared towards the renters of the property, and making sure that they have not just intuitive but highly visible and I think useful connections throughout the property, but ones that really deliver the benefit of biophilic design. Given that we have so many green natural assets on that property, can we improve those further with vegetation and use it in a way where a lot of those natural environments can now serve a different purpose, particularly since the site is so massive and we have so much topography. You're going to have all these different new amenities, new parks, right? And the amenity center delivered. How do we make sure that no matter where you live on that site, you have not just an accessible path to get there, but an interesting one as well? So biophilic design was not even on anybody's radar 10 years ago. So I think we're using this opportunity to bring that into the fold, and at least on a site of this scale, make sure that it's being effectively implemented. And similarly with tree canopy, I think the region has gotten much more aggressive in terms of its expectations for parks, for public right-of-ways, for preserved areas, for new development areas. So rather than relying on code language that we have for the corridor that would need to be studied further to kind of right-size itself for the properties, we felt that it may be the right time to kind of get more aggressive with this property and make sure that we were trying to achieve those targets moving forward. So those are two immediate examples that come to mind that we were just not as focused on 10 years ago because affordable housing was such a big driver. And I think in this case, we're allowing those elements, along with sustainability, to really catch up to where we need to be and kind of ensure resiliency moving forward.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I know you talked about the stream that runs through the property. Is there any plan to kind of naturalize that, or is it still going to be basically parking lot and then stream going forward? And more so the concern just about potential flooding rather than making the stream something that residents can enjoy and kind of have be beautiful and part of like the biophilic design?
I think there's a natural thought of repurposing that area for a lot of biophilic improvements and almost resident amenities, if you will. But I think what's really ahead of us are all the regulatory elements that come with a resource protection area, a stream that serves a broader portion of the county that may have flood risks at different times of the year. So we're really just studying that first and making sure the resiliency and mitigation of potential flood risk is addressed first. And I think once we understand that better, with more information, more current and updated modeling, we could then start to have that secondary conversation about potential biophilic improvements, if any are even warranted, and what does it mean for the adjacent parking and buildings.
Okay, thank you. Joe?
Yeah, are we talking about 4 Mile Run, or there was something called Doctor's Run, which I've never heard about? Is that like a tributary, or is this 4 Mile Run?
Yeah, it's not 4 Mile Run, but it is something. We'll pull up a slide. I think one of them shows the entire span of the network there, because it does travel much further north beyond just the Barcroft area. And it does, yeah, that image on the right, if you look at the blue
Right.
line, going all the way to Pershing and further north. So a lot of that resource is really collecting at the south end of Barcroft, and it does cross 16th Street, George Mason, and Falmouth Run, and just continues further too. So what we're trying to do is really understand what's happening in and around the site, what's happening along George Mason, and then really beginning to plug in some of the other development activity that's happening, along with more accurate modeling to help us understand what are the real impacts, and once we know them, what's the next move in terms of protecting the buildings and the parking that's there.
Thank you.
Katie?
Yeah, I had a follow-up question to the discussion about the environmental standards. I heard that in the renovation there was going to be some sort of geothermal heat pumps. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
I'm not, where did you hear that?
I thought it was at one of the previous meetings we had. They said they were going to, in the renovated units, put in geothermal heat pumps, which would be a low carbon way of heating the buildings.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that commitment. I know that we are going to, in the renovation areas, achieve the National Green Building Silver standard through meeting a series of qualifications, but let us run that back down. Unfortunately, our David Hildy with Gyro Lynch isn't here today. I think he probably might have that information available. So let's check on that.
Okay.
Sounds good. I do want to add that I appreciate the commitment to the 10% of units being set aside for residents making 30% of AMI or less. I know that was something that a lot of different community advocates and folks, including ourselves, have been pushing for, and it's good to see that commitment in the plan. So thank you, Jason.
Just two questions. The first one is that all the new households that move in, will they be, is there a cap at 60% AMI?
Are the new non-existing Barcroft residents? Is that the question?
Yes. So like, for example, like I'm looking through the MF DP, that right now there's about like 4.5% are above 80% AMI. And when the new market rate, they'll be, rent, looking through, they'll be rent capped. And then when they move in, like when those residents, let's say they choose to stay and they move into the market rate units, will those opened up units, will they be backfilled by someone at 60% or less, like guarantee, or could that vary?
That could vary, and it could go up to 80% AMI.
Okay, and would that depend on how much funding there is available, depending on the current like financing plan, and how much like okay, there's not enough money to subsidize like whatever 30% or 50, but like okay, it'll have to be backfilled by 80 if they're depending on the financing.
I think Melissa can jump in here maybe I think it'll be determined by kind of what portion are 30% to 60% to 80%. There's gonna, I believe, be this kind of blended approach to the units. Melissa, I don't know if you.
Yeah, I think that was a good answer. The units will average up to 60% AMI as each of the renovation phases occur. So right now the covenants are up to 60% AMI, but as the renovations occur, it will average up to 60% AMI. So I think that might fluctuate depending on the needs. There will be some existing residents that make up to 80% AMI that can move into a renovated or new affordable unit due to income averaging.
Awesome. And just a second question in terms of the development on the 4 Mile Run pattern, where there is buildings ranging up to 14 stories in height and tapering down to 10, 6, and then 3. stories as it goes in. For those buildings that are above that threshold of wood frame construction, in terms of concrete and steel construction, how much recently was the due diligence on the feasibility of the existing plan in terms of the update? I know that since the financing plan was done, has this been recently updated in terms of, okay, the estimates of construction start is still based on current prices of materials and interest rates? Is this still these are still good accurate that yes, we'll hit these targets? Or is there any, and I guess a follow-up would be, are there any policies to make sure that can follow through to make sure that what is proposed is actually feasible, and then we're not looking back 30 years from now saying, oh well, construction costs just continue. Is what risks are there, mitigations to make sure that what is proposed can be delivered, and what strategies are could be done to make sure that these buildings can be done so that there's no delays in terms of renovation, and making sure that the current residents are able to get into these new units to make sure that the other existing ones get renovated on time.
In terms of the new construction market rate buildings that would be along 4 Mile Runner and other of those kind of orange shaded areas in the phasing plan, throughout this process, Gyre Lynch has done some very high level development feasibility work, and they're not able to now do pricing analyses on buildings that they don't know what the materials are, what the facade will look like, how many levels of garage need to be in there. We're not at that level to price the buildings to determine their current feasibility. But these are buildings that will be built, between 2027 to 2037, and so they'll continue to be evaluated as we move along in the process. In terms of the renovation areas, we've already accomplished much of the renovation use permit entitlements that are needed to date, and continue to move forward with those to quickly renovate the buildings to remain and begin construction on the affordable buildings. And so Gyre Lynch continues to do that feasibility work as we move on. I don't know if Matt or Olivia want to answer the more policy related questions that you brought up.
I guess sorry, this is Melissa Danowski. I can jump in. I'm not sure if this exactly was your question, but I think it brings up that this is a long-term plan. And it could be a 10-year plan, and so there is a certain amount of patience that will be necessary. All the units aren't going to be delivered right at once, and there may be just unforeseen market changes that might affect phasing. But I do want to assure everyone that the affordable housing financing plan that's a real commitment that will be done, especially the commitment to 134 units up to 30% AMI, and nothing about Gyre Lynch's proposed plans and the MFDP related to land use changes any of the commitments in the affordable housing financing plan.
Awesome, thank you.
And just one last question for me. Is there any anticipation that AHIP funds will be needed for any of the renovation projects or new construction in the future?
Yeah, so back in 2021, the county provided a $150 million loan to help Gyre Lynch acquire the property. And as the new phases are renovated and redeveloped, portions of that $150 million loan will essentially be refinanced and provided as new loans for gap financing as each of the renovation and redevelopment phases move forward. We don't expect to need to put in more than that $150 million, but there will still be gap financing in each individual phase as it moves forward.
So essentially the 150 million line of credit, or I don't know if it's actually been changed into a longer term loan at this point. So that just the repayment will get pushed out continually as needed as it's refinanced to provide additional funding for these projects. Am I understanding correctly, or?
Yeah, so that's kind of there's a $150 million county acquisition fund loan, and that was financed through a line of credit, and there is debt service on that line of credit. There have been some previous board actions to kind of pay that down. I think now it's maybe even paid down by 15 or 30 million. I forget the exact amount. And so that's one way that is kind of helping to reduce that annual debt service. And I think at some point, the line, something needs to happen in the line of credit where it, gets refinanced. But I'm not sure of those details. But yes, there is debt service associated with the line of credit that was used.
Okay. But it sounds like there wouldn't be any new AHIF requests as a result of the construction that would be happening. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions before we wrap this up for a vote? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve to recommend approval of the Master Financing Development Plan?
Yes, I'm moving.
I'll second.
Great, Travis. Thank you. Let's do a roll call vote. Second. So I'll start with myself. I vote yes. Is Commissioner Montgomery? I feel like I didn't see her.
I think she's absent tonight.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Surface,
Yes.
Commissioner Wanger,
Yes.
Commissioner Linick,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Yes.
Commissioner McGilvray,
Yes.
Commissioner Blake,
Yes.
Commissioner Heminger,
Yes.
Commissioner Escobar,
Yes.
Commissioner Ross,
Yes.
and Commissioner Ventrone.
Yes.
It's good.
Oh.
It passes unanimously. Oh.
Ellen, I'm here. I don't
Oh,
know
okay.
if it's showing up. And I
Oh,
say
sorry.
this.
Yep. Commissioner Rubalcava.
Yes. I
Thank
don't know
you.
what's wrong with it tonight. All right, thank you.
Great. Okay, it passes. So we'll get the draft letter out to the commission to refine. Thank you to staff and the applicant representatives for the presentation. Very much appreciated. And very appreciative of all the work done to engage with both the community and the residents. I think this is the most extensive resident engagement that I've ever seen associated with the project in the county. So that's great. And Matt, you had somebody else?
Yeah, and I'm just going to be conservative here, but I'm wondering if it's just to be on the safe side, if two other motions could occur, given that we are asking the county board to adopt updates to our Columbia Pike plans and also advertising changes to the GLUP and MTP documents. I would imagine they probably want to hear what the Housing Commission wanted to signal on those two fronts, kind of reiterating back to the three items that we were bringing to them in July. Yeah, that's the one.
Okay. Had to make it more complicated. No. So do we have a motion? I think we can probably consolidate this, but do we have a motion to also adopt or to recommend changes to the Columbia Pike revitalization plan and the Columbia Pike neighborhoods area plan?
I so move.
Thank
I'll
you.
second it.
And just to clarify, that's it, right? Those are all of the things that need to be included.
Those, and then number two, that's on the screen, the authorization of advertising for the comprehensive plan element updates, basically the GLUP and the MTP changes.
Okay. So do I have a friendly amendment to add the GLUP and the MTP changes to that as well?
I so move.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Great. Okay. So let's do I think actually let's do a voice vote on making a change to that. All those in favor of adding the GLUP and the MTP to that initial motion, say aye.
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 Thank you. All those opposed, say nay. And any abstentions? Okay, so that passes. So let's do roll call vote for the rest of the items that we're recommending approval for, which is the revitalization plan, the neighborhoods area plan, the GLUP, and the MTP. And okay, I vote aye. Commissioner Surface,
Yes.
Commissioner Wenger,
Yes.
Commissioner Linick,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Yes.
Commissioner McGilvray,
Yes.
Commissioner Blake,
Yes.
Commissioner Heminger,
Yes.
Commissioner Escobar,
Yes.
Commissioner Ross,
Yes.
Commissioner Ventrone,
Yes.
and Commissioner Rubalcava.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Passes. Yeah, thank you again to all of our presenters.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Okay. Next item on our agenda is the electronic meetings policy part 2. As we were warned that we would end up having to probably vote on a new version of it. Alex, can you talk about what's different in this version?
Yeah, so yeah, back with another version. This one, the big difference is it does in number 3 there on page 1. Let me actually share my screen so you can all see it. So it has to do with audio-visual technology. The electronic communication means used allows the public to hear members of the Housing Commission participating in the all virtual public meeting, and the important part, when audio-visual technology is available, to see members of the Housing Commission as well. So this is the update. Basically, when we do have virtual meetings, please have your cameras on. The document does go on to say that you are technically absent if your camera is off. If you have a working camera and it's off, you are absent. At the same time, staff has been told that they do not need to keep updated minute by minute notes of attendance. So I think the overall theme is just please keep your cameras on when possible. And that's the big change. There's a few other small changes like the definition of caregiver, a few things that were very minor. I did also recently receive a FAQ, frequently asked questions, that was compiled for all the commissions. So I'll be sending that out tomorrow, and I think that will capture all the questions you all may have on this. It is pretty comprehensive. So take a look through that tomorrow as well. And if you have any further questions, let me know, and I can loop in CAO and CMO and who else. But they do have that document, so I'll share that tomorrow. But hopefully that puts to rest some of these questions for now about the electronic meetings policy.
Not sure it puts them to rest, but I do have a question then. So this says, for the purposes of the quorum, they'll be considered absent, which makes me think that we could lose quorum if people aren't on video. But can people who are not on video vote?
So I actually believe possibly not.
Because it also says if their camera is working. So if their camera is not working, does that mean that that's fine? They don't have to have video? I would imagine that kind of has to be the case, because if the county's not going to provide, you know, webcams to folks, they can't expect them to have a camera, I would assume, but maybe Virginia does.
Yeah, um I'm not positive. I will read through the frequently asked questions document that I have up on the screen now. As you can see, there are a good amount covered in it, and send that out. Oh, let me get back to you on that.
Okay. I know this is the last action item that we have for tonight's meeting. The rest are just information items. And I know we have a couple members of the commission who are currently off camera. I assume since we haven't adopted this yet, that we don't have to worry about the fact that they're off camera. But as soon as we do adopt it, if we were to take any subsequent votes, then this would apply, even though it's unclear how we're impacted by it. But okay, Sarah, your hand is up.
Yeah, so just kind of going back on that, like I've tried so many times to get like my camera to like log on and it keeps kicking me out. Like I've tried on my phone, like disconnected, and like I emailed Alex and you tonight to let them know. So maybe that is asked in the frequently FAQs. Um, but yeah, like I'm trying to get on. My camera icon is not even, I can't even access it right now. So I don't know if it's like an update on my end that I didn't complete and that's why it's not working. And I don't want to take up more time on this, but um yeah, like I don't know what happens in that when I've been trying to get on. But I'm here
Yeah.
in the meeting, so that's
Well, and I know that like Doris, she's not like a voting member of our commission, but if she was, she always joins by phone. Um, so would this preclude her from counting towards quorum? Like, yeah. Go ahead, Karen.
I just want to mention that if you download the Microsoft Teams app, then you have a better chance of getting your camera to work. And also the second point is if you have another app open on your laptop that allows you to have your camera open, that will mess up Microsoft Teams.
Oh yeah, I've tried it on my phone with
Okay.
my team.
I
Yeah,
just,
with my Teams because I have that for work, and then also on my laptop, and it likes it for a minute, and then it hates me. So yeah, but I think there might have been just an update that it didn't like while I was in the meeting. I don't know.
Number
yeah.
three,
Oh,
number three does say when audiovisual technology is available. I mean, a lawyer could interpret that to mean for an individual or for the group. So I don't know. That's just something I thought I'd point out.
Yeah, I mean that could be a potential loophole. Like, does someone just have to declare my video is not working, so I'm not gonna have video today, but I should be counted. And if that's just what we need to do, it's again, like as we talked about last month, there were a ton of questions that have been raised about the vagueness and like confusing aspects of this law. Um, and yeah, maybe the FAQs answer some of it, but again, we don't have a choice. We have to adopt it. So we'll figure out what it means after we adopt it, I guess. Didn't some senator or congressman say that famously? Like, I'll figure out what's in the bill after I vote for it or something. But yeah, that's kind of what we have to do here. Alex, anything else you want to note before we entertain motions?
Yeah, so in the FAQ number 22 does say, can commission members call in and be counted for attendance if they do not use video camera? And it does say no. So yeah, it says no. The statute requires that the public be able to see the members of the public body when audiovisual technology is available. Again, it quoted that when audiovisual is available. So again, a little vague there. But
yeah, I wonder.
Yeah, I think the CAO argument might be that the audio visual technology being available might be the Microsoft Teams itself platform. Maybe that might. So yeah, I'll send the document out, and if there are further questions, please let me know. But I do believe if you are off camera, technically you're not allowed to vote once we pass this policy. Yes.
So let's hope Microsoft Teams doesn't malfunction anymore, ever again. Okay. Do I have a motion to adopt this version of the electronic meetings policy?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, and because we've not adopted it yet, I will be allowing those off camera to vote as well. Let me
Thank
do
you.
roll call. 1 second. Okay. Commissioner Macbeth, I vote aye. Commissioner Surface,
Yes.
Commissioner Wenger,
Yes.
Commissioner Linick,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Yes.
Commissioner McGilvray,
Yes.
Commissioner Blake,
Yes.
Commissioner Heminger,
Yes.
Commissioner Escobar,
Yes.
Commissioner Ross,
Yes.
Commissioner Ventrone,
Yes.
and Commissioner Rubalcava.
Yes.
Thank you. It passes. So, yep, just from now on, if everyone can make sure that they have their cameras on so that we can maintain quorum during our virtual meetings, as well as ensure that each person is able to vote. Great. Next item on the agenda is, I believe, development updates.
Yeah, so there are no development updates tonight, and there are also no meetings. It is almost August, so the county board is on recess in August. So there aren't a whole lot of projects coming through the pipeline in the next month. I will say that when we come back in September, we are expecting definitely 1, possibly 2 site plans in September, being the NSTA site in the courthouse area and possibly also Wakefield Manor. So those are 2 site plans that are on the near future horizon. But other than that, there's nothing else for development updates this evening.
Thank you. Let's go to subcommittee and liaison reports. Legislative Priority Subcommittee. Nikki?
Hi, everyone. So we had our first meeting a few weeks ago. It was a good brainstorming session, but we're hoping to kind of narrow our list of priorities and come up with an actual, I guess, formal list that we'd like to recommend or at least bring back to the larger committee. So if you're interested in joining our next meeting, we can decide on a date now. I've been really asking folks to kind of think about what they think our list should be so that we can continue the conversation we had a few weeks ago where we looked at our priorities from last year, and folks are going to bring some new thoughts based on best practices, etc. So I know I sent out an email about some dates at the end of the month. I think just based on some emails I've received so far, we can look at July 24th, which is a Wednesday, July 29th, which is a Monday, or July 30th, which is a Tuesday. So maybe we could use the raise hand feature, might be the easiest way to go about that, to see who's available, unless, because I know this is in Zoom, there's no polling. Does that work for folks? Okay, cool.
Fine with that?
Okay, so if you're available July 24th, raise your hand, and then I think it assigns everyone a number, so we can just count them.
Oh, and just to confirm, all of the times would be 7 to 9. Okay, so it looks like just 5 people available, is that right? Okay, so 5 for the 24th. What about, okay, so everyone put their hand down and then we can redo it. What about the 29th? 7 to 9. Okay, looks like 6. Great, and then the 30th?
Wait, I think people got to put their hands down first.
Oops, sorry, yeah. Restart, and then, okay, now for the 30th. Okay, I'm seeing 5, 6. Okay, 6.
You can also do the 29th. I missed that.
Oh, okay.
Ooh, so that's 7 for the 29th.
Okay, so yeah, let's do the 29th. All right, so we will have our next session on the 29th where we'll kind of go back through that list from last year, and then everyone can bring their thoughts on what they'd like to see based on the research everyone's been doing between our meetings. I know there were some folks on from last time. If anyone wants to add anything.
Thought it was a good discussion. Looking forward to discussion at the next meeting and helping us narrow down eventually some of the recommendations to bring to the full commission.
All right, that's it for me.
You guys can all lower your hands. Okay. Next, anything from SIDSAC?
No, we didn't meet in June.
Okay, sounds good. We don't have anyone on the historical affairs. We don't have anyone on the community services board for C2E2. Katie?
Yes, so there's 2 kind of committees that are starting to meet this summer. One is policy and one is outreach. Policy, unfortunately, they scheduled the policy meeting for tonight. So I asked for a recording and I can send that to anyone who's interested. They're giving a presentation on the green building incentive policy and potential updates to that. The next policy meeting is on August 5th, and I'm planning to go to that. There's also the outreach meetings. Elizabeth, were you able to go to any of those?
Yeah, I went to I think there's only been one, but I did attend part of it. Yeah. It was a lot of brainstorming. I think the members were wanting to create like a plan of action right on the spot, but everybody had questions about like messaging, what the actual call to action was going to be. And so most of that time was discussing that, not really, creating a plan right now, but we needed some organization. So that's where we are.
And that's a plan to do what?
So the committee, it's a committee, right? Yeah, the committee, they're trying to find ways to like communicate to the community on how they can create a more sustainable way of life, I guess, depending what, in their homes, in their apartments, transportation, all of that. And it's so broad, right? And there's a lot of policies that people are not aware of, that the committee wants to highlight, but they didn't really know which ones. And so there was a lot of discussion around how we could make information digestible to people while not bombarding them with like a whole bunch of like policy jargon, and getting them to make habit or take the actions to, again, move on the sustainable path.
Sounds great. Okay. Any other subcommittee or like liaison updates? I think that's it. Okay. Well, that's all that we have on our agenda. If there's nothing else, then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.